Hello everyone and welcome to this week's episode of Against All Odds. My name is Daniel Coker, your regular host, and this week we're privileged to have as a guest on our show the amazing Jacque Onalo. Jacque, you're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Jacque is an award-winning lawyer and leadership trainer who also happens to be a barrister and solicitor of England and Wales. She's also an advocate of the Supreme Court of Kenya. Jacque is also a fellow of the Royal Society for the Encouragement of Arts, Manufacturers and Commerce. She's also the founder and CEO of Jolt International Limited, which is an influential leadership development organization. And she sits on several esteemed boards and leadership think tanks. She's also a trustee of Comic Relief. It was quite interesting when I found that out. And is a former chair of the Comic Relief Remuneration Committee. As a respected equity, diversity, inclusion and belonging expert, she supports organizations to adhere to legislation and strive to become values-led. Jacque is also an acclaimed and in-demand international speaker and has spoken at key events for the UN, the UK House of Lords, the UK Home Office, City Hall, Africa Oil and Gas, and Brent Council, amongst others. Finally, she's also an African diaspora change maker, one of 100 key African leaders selected for her extensive achievements in development work across the UK and Africa. So how does a Kenyan-born, British-trained lawyer, wear so many hats? Just tell us a bit about your story.
Okay. So it wasn't by design.
Okay.
Yeah, to be absolutely honest. And I might go right to the very start.
Okay.
So as a child, initially I thought I'd be an actress. Okay. And I auditioned for a few films. My dad didn't think it was a good idea. And then I thought that I might become a nun. And I went to Catholic schools run by nuns, one of them called Loreto Convent, Misangari. Okay. But even the nuns didn't think I had it in me to be a nun, so they put an end to that idea. And so I said, I think I want to travel the world. Okay. I don't have the money to do it, so I'll become, a steward and air hostess. Okay. And my father said, my goodness, you want to be a maid in the air? Totally un-PC, but he wasn't going to support that. Yeah. But to be absolutely honest, from the age of 8, I knew I was going to be a lawyer. Okay. And I felt quite lucky to have known that at a young age. Okay. I have many peers, many friends who are still finding themselves. Okay. And I'm also still evolving and rediscovering myself. But at the age of 8, I knew I was going to be a lawyer. Okay. Influenced in part by the fact that my father was a well-respected lawyer. And I think what I was consuming on television, The Crown, etc., I didn't think that, being a lawyer was a good career to go into. My parents were both working in the community. Okay. So my father was a lawyer, he was a constitutional law expert, he was a lecturer, an expert in land law, and he wrote books in those particular areas. He was pivotal in the constitution that we have in Kenya, and unfortunately died the year that the constitution was ratified. Oh, okay. So there was a big sense, and he was also involved in multi-partism. Okay. So there was a sense of activism, change, that I could see, from him. Although I didn't have a front seat, but he was involved in that. My mother, nurse, a counsellor, working in the community, working quite a lot in the community. So when I think about, this is in Nairobi, grew up in Nairobi in Kenya. So when I think about it, this interaction with them, I think brought me to human rights, because I've always been interested in human rights. So of course, growing up, the usual things I loved, Janet Jackson, New Edition. Yeah. I'm now showing my age, but I'm really proud of my age too. But I did look at people like Mother Teresa, Martin Luther King, which I thought was unusual for somebody quite young. And I would go to bed, and I now know that it's not unusual to go to bed as a young person and think that you're going to change the world. All I knew that all I had to do was to grow up.
Okay.
But now I'm grown up, and there's some reality. But nonetheless, I feel in my own ways, I'm creating an impact. So I think it was the nurturing from home.
Okay.
What I was exposed to, and just choosing a career whereby I felt was suited to the traits that I had and could make a difference. So that's where the journey began, and I was in Kenya. I was fortunate to have a good education.
Okay.
And a good education in terms of I was allowed to try many things.
Okay.
Try and fail at them and then realize that they weren't for me. So I absolutely love music.
Okay.
If I sang, your podcast career would come to an end. So it is really, really bad. But I did try. I tried to play piano. I tried the violin. I tried record. I failed abysmally in all of them. And so then I chose my lane.
Okay.
And, I saw myself in the arts and humanities.
Okay.
I had a good voice for advocacy, could analyze things, etc.
Okay.
I enjoy art. I'm not an artist, I'm an art enthusiast. But the ability to try all these things, stereotype. You probably think that I'm a good runner because I'm from Kenya, but I'm not. And I did try that as well. I was good at walking race. But the point that I'm trying to make was the ability to explore. A good education allows you to explore, to try without fear.
Yeah.
When you get older, you're very self-conscious, etc. But I was young and I tried many things.
Okay.
And I found what suited me and where my strengths were.
Okay.
Education was fine. Educated.
So what brought you to the UK then?
The UK. The colonizers. No, I shouldn't say that. But yes and no.
Okay.
Kenya is a former British colony, and therefore we believe that the best education is in the UK.
Okay.
And my parents worked very hard to be able to afford that education.
Yeah.
Invested in a world-class education for myself and my
siblings. You came here as a foreign student?
I came as a foreign student. I
came
here.
That must have cost your parents an arm and a leg.
Luckily, I'm not trying to fit into their shoes because I probably will not. But it was sacrifice. I come from a working class family. They weren't born into wealth, neither was I. But they worked hard and invested in our education. I came to the UK a day after my 20th birthday.
Okay.
Yes, I remember that quite clearly.
Okay.
And I came with my father, he brought me to the UK. And it was okay until I got to Wolverhampton where I went to university.
Okay.
And the first things that the halls of residence are not what's in the brochure. And my dad said, "Look, you have a sink." And I almost cried. I was like, how does this sink help me? But then it showed again that the quality of life that I had in Kenya, I began to miss my garden because on one side I had the motorway, on the other side I had the Molyneux Stadium.
Okay.
But coming to the UK helped me grow.
Okay.
So although I was a challenging teenager, but I'm actually a homebody. It was my first time away from home.
Okay.
Yeah, I think after I was a day bag, all my other siblings were sent to boarding school. So I must have really petrified my parents. So coming to the UK and being in university for the first time was very difficult.
Okay.
But it helped me grow. My first week I went for my lectures, finished at about 4:00, went to the payphone, that was like 94, they didn't have a mobile then, and I'll just go and cry on the phone to my mom. So after week my dad called me at this payphone and he's like, "Jackie, I'm coming tomorrow, I'm coming to pick you up. Your mom can't take it, she can't cope, and you can't cope." So he showed up.
He did?
He did show up, and he was like, "Are you ready?" And I mean, to be honest, I didn't return to Kenya because of my education. It was because they'd thrown me a really big party and I couldn't bear to go back 2 weeks after.
Oh.
But that set aside, that allowed me to grow, to find my own footing, to create new friends in a new country. when I finished, I was supposed to go back to Kenya and join my father at the law firm and be Onalo and Company advocate. And I didn't do that. And whether it was ego, ambition, I don't know. But I just felt if I went back to Kenya, I would always be seen as Peter's daughter.
Okay.
My father's daughter. And I was sweating bricks here, working really hard. So I thought I would stay and charter my own career under my own terms. I quickly regretted that because I thought I wanted to go by merit. So I remember that I was on vacation third year and asking my dad, I'm going to go back and do my bar vocational course. It was called the BVC then. Yeah. And he's like, you're going to stay here and do your pupillage. And I'm like, Dad, I'm really going back. So the morning that I was leaving, I went to the bedroom. I was like, oh, bye, Dad. I'm off. Yeah. And he's like, I'll see you in town at the office. And I'm like, I'm really off. And 2 weeks later, he was like, where's this Jacque? I haven't seen her around. Mom was like, remember when she said she was leaving? Yeah. So that was a big decision. Okay. And I did my law degree. I did my bar vocational course, and then I applied for pupillage.
How was that, applying for pupillage?
Yeah, that was an eye-opener. I think then reality began to set in. So when I applied the first year, I didn't get even one letter, not even rejection.
Really?
I was like, are they really getting my application? Okay. Well, so nothing. Okay. The second year, rejections. And I was thinking, I've got my 2-1 degree. I was head of African Caribbean Society. I was head of the Debate Society. I've done many pupillages. I was like, what else could I do? So I said to get a job as a paralegal.
Oh, okay.
Yes, and by then, given my then boyfriend was like, do you really have to die with this law? Because, you're a bright lady. Yeah. You could do anything else, but it's been 2 years and still the doors are not opening. So anyway, I was a paralegal, working with solicitors, doing some outdoor clerking, and the importance of networks. Okay. So I didn't know it was networking then, but it was networking. So I was meeting barristers every day. Okay. One of the cases I remember was in Portsmouth, 6 months, and 15 defendants. 2 legal counsels. I had 30 barristers. Every day. Either at lunch or on the train or somewhere. And I made some connections and I began to apply, and then I got the pupillage. So it wasn't a straight path. I had to deviate to then come back to what I wanted. And when I did my pupillage, I was doing criminal defense law. It was amazing. It was fascinating. I had a fantastic pupil supervisor.
Did he have the option to sort of move around different fields, or was it just?
No. You basically stay, depends on the chambers, and your pupil supervisor. So the work that they're doing is the work that you were doing. And he was a sex lawyer. Sex lawyer. We were defending some people who had done some pretty horrific things. Yes, really, really. But it did really hone in my skills very quickly. But then I stumbled upon a human rights case, an asylum case. And the trajectory of my life changed. I left chambers and went to join a charity called Immigration Advisory Service. And that's when my career as a human rights lawyer began. A career that is now almost 30 years. Yes. And again, it was just a change. I just found this case. It really appealed to my sensibilities. The UK has always had a very hostile immigration climate. And it was a place that, even today, if you want to do something based on ego, don't be a human rights lawyer, because the regime here is very, very difficult. And so you win as many cases as you lose. But even when you lose, you remind yourself that you have to stay there for people who are quite vulnerable, who are seeking international protection or family reunion and the rest of it. So again, it was by default. So I pivoted and I became a human rights lawyer, and I'll be a human rights lawyer, I think, really for the rest of my life. So that's the long and the short of it. If I had gone back to Kenya, and we were speaking today in the car about being back home, I would have had the connections that my parents have. So that network, it would have been a different trajectory.
It's a completely different ecosystem.
Yes, absolutely. But I am where I'm supposed to be. It might have been easier, but I'm happy with the choices that that I have made.
Okay, but then you've also dabbled in sort of venture capital and other bits, and you've done so many
Gosh,
things.
this is so judgmental. Doubled. I say that because sometimes they think that VC is gambling, but it's not. It's not. I assure everybody. So
Okay.
how does a human rights lawyer end up in venture capital?
My question exactly.
Yes.
I'm struggling to see
It is either being very bold or being very foolish. I'll let your listeners decide which that is. But how I came to be in venture capital was because I am on the board of Comic Relief.
Oh,
And one of the trustees is in venture capital.
Oh,
Now, I'd been on the board with him for 3 years.
Okay.
I just knew he was this tech finance guy. He was brilliant. I didn't know what VC was or what he did, but his expertise was in that area.
Okay.
And then George Floyd was murdered.
Oh. Okay.
And it was a trying time, especially, for everybody around the world that is either black or, is a friend of black people. It was a difficult time and a lot of conversations going on. So I ended up speaking to him like literally every week. We were speaking about race equity, about racism, about how we create change, in venture capital, it's appalling.
Yeah.
Less than 2%.
Wow.
Of VC money goes to our community.
Wow.
So in the midst of having all of these conversations, he was like, would you want to come and spend some time with us? And, help us think around our values, leadership development, around equity, diversity, inclusion and belonging. And I went in. So when I joined them, I still didn't know what VC was.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I did something called the Newton Venture Program, which is a fundamentals program into VC.
Okay.
Which is one of the things that I had spoken to him about, that we had been speaking about. How do you get people into a system that structurally was not built for them?
Yeah.
But if I, as a lawyer, didn't even know what VC is, what about other people? Yeah. So I did this, and it was an eye-opener. And of course, spending time with them on deal flow, etc., was really important. But I think it was the ability to be able to pivot and change. And why venture capital? I still see the opportunity for this particular firm and for myself is to be able to influence the portfolio companies.
They invest.
So it's always thinking about scale.
Okay.
All these startups, can they build in a way that is equitable, that is fair, that is using access to all the talent? Can we disperse capital in a way that is equitable? And there is the opportunity. So the way that I see my life is that I'm just a catalyst. I'm just a little drop. I don't do anything for anybody.
Okay.
I just support individuals and organizations to fulfill their potential.
Okay.
Yeah, so they have it in them.
Okay.
And I think that's how you have sustainable change, sustainable growth, etc. If there's like true ownership. So, having to change from being an operator to an advisor was also another good change and an interesting change. So that's the long and the short. I mean, for a very long time, my mother and my family were very concerned about me because my own portfolio was possibly more than 50% pro bono. Like, is there like a rehab we can take you to? You're like, they're like, you've done your bit, just leave it.
Yeah.
But I believe in Kismet.
Okay.
And I am religious. I think more spiritual than religious, and you always end up where you're supposed to be. Because whilst I was on the board, my colleagues were noticing what I could do and my strengths.
Okay.
So if you're always walking, your expertise can be seen, your values can be seen, you are able to attract the opportunities that you require. So again, that's another story about networks and passion and values and really staying in the spaces that you feel are best to create change.
One of the things I've picked up on
Yes.
this podcast, talking to people like yourselves, is this aspect of doing everything that you're doing as though somebody's watching you. You know, because just listen to what the statement you just made. You said people were noticing what you were doing, and that sort of led you to other opportunities.
Okay.
You know, and it's been quite eye-opening because a lot of times people do things and they do it in a reluctant way. They're not really invested and engaged. But if you do things and you do things with the spirit of excellence, and you apply yourself and all that, you never know who's watching. You know, I mean, ever since we started this podcast, you know, I've had people who have noticed little things. Oh, your sound is improving, your lighting's improving. It's like you never know who's watching. You know, and
Exactly.
I think it's an important attribute that our viewers can learn, especially people from the Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities, that whatever opportunities are presented to us, let's do it to the best of our ability, because you never know where that could lead to.
Yes,
Yeah.
I say I agree with do it to the best of your ability. I wouldn't say do it as if somebody is watching,
Okay.
because that is almost like a performance.
Okay.
I really believe in people being their authentic selves.
Okay.
So you should be authentic.
Okay.
And don't paralyze yourself
Mm-hmm.
with what the audience thinks. I think it can be quite disempowering.
Okay.
However, be the best version of yourself, and that's the excellence that you're talking about.
Okay.
And whatever you do, you apply yourself. So whatever I've done, whether I was getting paid for it or not, if I said I'm going to do something, then I am committed to it. You know, I'm giving my all to it. And also I want to learn. I think part of growth and opportunity is inquiries. Whenever I go to any space, yes, I do want to present myself as the best version of myself.
Okay.
I want to be able to add value, but I also want to be able to gain value.
Okay.
So I think for young people who are watching, and opportunities can be far, you know, sometimes it seems that they're so difficult. But if you're able to articulate the value that you're going to take to a space, but also be able to see the value you can get from that particular space.
Okay.
And that's how I've approached things, whether it's being, you know, a defense lawyer, criminal defense lawyer, being a human rights lawyer, leadership trainer, now going into VC. I'm always looking into what can I put into this space to elevate it, make it more equitable, but also what can I gain? And that level of inquiry, humility, really, I mean, the world develops and continues to grow. Innovation, inquiry, I think is really important. So that's what I'd say, wherever you're going into, be able to articulate your value proposition.
Okay.
And, you know, when I went on to, I still sit on several boards, although now I'm cutting back on some of them because, you know, we're all limited resources and trying to have a better work-life balance. Initially, I would go in and I'd think about what can I contribute, etc. I didn't think about what I can get. But on reflection, you know, when I sit back on the various boards, I have the opportunity of working alongside some of the greatest minds in the world. Full stop.
Okay.
There is no MBA that I could ever get that could ever beat that experience. It's also being able to value the experience of where you are. Nothing is wasted. So even my pro bono experience, which I'm again getting remunerated for, has led to other things because, you know, I've gone in and I've put in what needs to be put in.
Why are you so passionate about giving back? Because with the leadership training, and then also the fact that in addition to everything else that you do, you're also a lecturer. You know, so I'm getting a feeling that you're quite driven or quite passionate about giving back to others. Where does this passion come from?
So I think giving back, I hesitate in terms of giving back because it sounds like I have this thing that I'm giving to people, etc. but contributing.
Okay.
So I think I explained about my upbringing. So contributing to change and to growth. I believe that a lot has been invested in me, and I've invested a lot in myself.
Okay.
And I am grateful for every opportunity to learn, to have a step up, to be mentored, to be sponsored. I really am grateful. And I honestly believe that we're not here for ourselves.
Okay.
We're here for a greater purpose. People often forget that the purpose of higher education is for the community.
Okay.
So of course there is for ourselves, you've got mortgages, businesses, family, travel. You've got things that require all of that. But over and above that, we're here as human beings. It's about connection and creating change. And I thrive in spaces whereby people are change makers. Again, I feel like my currency is energy. So when I'm in spaces whereby people are making change, whether it's in tech, whether they're entrepreneurs or they're human rights lawyers, whether they're activists, but they're creating change. That desire that you want to move the dial, whatever your platform is, I think is really, really, really crucial. So where it came from, I think subconsciously, from my upbringing. But then also when I've been able to reflect, I do feel that I have an obligation. That somebody who's been in receipt of so much from those who were close to me and some who didn't really know me well apart from the work context, that there is an obligation to give back. So like when I went into the leadership training career, it actually came from failure.
Oh, really?
So, I'm not ashamed to say that I'm a kick-ass lawyer. And for some time, I ran my own law firm. It was successful. Myself and other lawyers there were doing really well. The clients just kept on coming because we were doing a good job. We put our all into it. Then the economic downturn came.
Okay.
And the nature of the work that we're doing, our clients usually are not wealthy. So we really
took
a big hit. And I had some trainee solicitors, and I made a bad business decision. There was a value that to allow them to finish their training contract. So I closed that business with tremendous debt. But then it was a time for reflection. So I gave myself like 2 weeks, and I was down. I felt terrible. And then I was like, you still have your qualification. Nothing's vested. You have your education, you have your experience, your expertise. And I just became a consultant, paid off the debt, and I continued. And then I began to get offers for leadership development. And I went on training. As being an African diaspora change maker, I benefited from 1 year of training. I met a fantastic group of women there. One of them is Dr. Titi, who became my mentor. She said to me, "Oh, Jackie, this leadership thing that you're doing, I'm organizing a meeting with the head of Common Purpose." I didn't even ask her. She had dropped the phone. What's this meeting about? I went up for the meeting, and it was a good meeting, and they then offered me some training. About $5,000 worth of training. Of course, I said yes. And then I've become a contributor on their programs, etc. Then I sat back and I reflected all of this. I hope that I'm a better individual, that I'm a better professional, a better entrepreneur. But the legacy can't be just about me. And I felt the legacy was to cascade what I had learned. And again, that's the legacy. And also maybe because I was brought up Catholic, after going through this suffering of closing the law firm, I don't believe that we just suffer for the sake of suffering. It's about learning lessons and growing. And those lessons should not just be for myself, for those who are coming behind me. So I mentioned that the business closed with economic downturn. That was only one aspect of it. The largest aspect of it was my lack of networking, marketing and advertising. And that was on me. Yes. So you could be as brilliant as you want to be. But if we don't know that you're there and the value that you bring, you just better dig a hole and put a stone, cover yourself. That's what it means. So I learned a very expensive and difficult lesson that I now share. I'm happy to share the lesson. People often talk about their accolades, and I could do that as well. But a lot of what has worked for me has come from a place whereby I have learnt a lesson. Yes. And
so tell us a bit, let's go a little bit deeper into this. So
Yes.
let's talk about networking,
Yes.
marketing, and one more thing.
that's a branding. You've got to be
Branding,
able,
okay.
yes, branding,
Tell us a bit
advertising.
more about it, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not my forte. I mean, I'm on a podcast. It's because our mutual friend Yao asked me. I'd far rather be talking about the causes. We should conspire for good. I don't like talking about myself.
Okay.
However, the world is competitive.
Okay.
And if you want to create change, how will people know? You know, one of the lessons that I learned from my good friend and mentor I mentioned, Dr. Titi Njoko, she said, Jackie, you do so many things. It's confusing. You need to be able to have a simple proposition. And I did that. And I then began to attract the opportunities that I wanted. A simple branding exercise. Who am I? What is my organization? What are we trying to solve for? What value do we add? Who are we looking to work with, etc.? Being able to articulate that is how any business grows.
Okay.
It is how any advocacy campaign works. It is a really simple premise that if I meet you, you know, you can say, this is what she does. This is what this organization does. We were at Sainsbury's, we definitely know what they do, right? Yes, so I think it's really important, one, to be authentic and comfortable in your identity and being comfortable in who you are and your value proposition, whether it's in business or in commerce, in whatever you're doing, then it's being able to articulate that.
Okay.
So then you're able to attract what it is that you need to be able to accelerate growth.
So, Jackie, have you always been a good communicator? Because I've sort of listened to you. We had a ride in the car, and we're talking, and you come across as being very articulate. And I guess in your line of work, being articulate helps. You know, was it something that you acquired intentionally? Was it part of your upbringing? You know, did you get involved in debate societies in university? You know, the reason I'm asking this question is that there might be people watching who might want to improve their ability to communicate. Because like you just said, you've got to be able to articulate the value proposition that you bring into the table. If you go to an interview, you've got to be able to articulate the value proposition that you bring. And some people might be competent, but might struggle to articulate the particular skill set that they're bringing to the equation. Is there anything that you can tell us about your about this from your experience?
I think it's both nature and nurture.
Okay.
But I think nurture is really important. I actually haven't thought about it. So whether I'm articulate or not is not something that I know, but people tell me.
Okay.
But my work, my livelihood, I think all the things I do, I get paid to talk as a lawyer, as a lecturer. So
As a speaker.
I should really ensure my voice, you know. But that aside, yes, you are right. Even in school, in primary school, you know, I'd go to mass and I would read the readings and I'd say the prayers and I'd be involved in theatre and debate. And debate was not just about articulating the point, but arguing the point, which was really handy in being a lawyer.
Okay.
So you kind of see that you are developing this skill. Nothing's wasted. You know, I can go back to my childhood and still see it. And being involved in drama and public speaking. Even now, when I have to speak to a group of people, I still have a few minutes of anxiety and my heart races, etc. People find that shocking. They're like, you've been a lawyer for 30 years, you're an international speaker. And yes, it doesn't, it's healthy. Okay. For me, it's healthy. I've been able to turn it around. Okay. It means I respect my audience and I care about what I'm going to deliver with them or what we're going to share. It's important. I think if I stopped having those nerves, it probably means I'm being a bit blasé, like, you know, I've done it. And ego is a terrible thing. Practice. You know, I can speak, I can hold a conversation, I can have a debate. And often when you go, conversations and not what you think they're going to go. When you go to court, it depends on what you're asked, how it happens. So you can prepare to an extent, but preparation is important.
Okay.
When I had my first paid gig, and actually that came from the fact that I was a chair of a charity. One of the volunteers had seen my social media and says, "Oh, my organization is having Black History Month, and I can see that you're a speaker. Would you come and speak?" I quickly registered my company that night, and I became a speaker. And I began demanding to get paid to speak.
Why not?
On my poor family. I recorded myself speaking and I sent it to them for critique. I mean, honestly, I better buy something to say thank you or sorry on my way out. But I practiced, and then I would say to myself, perhaps I'm not as good as I think that I am, if I have to work at it. And then I watched a film about Martin Luther. And there he was in the mirror practicing. I was like, who am I? So you don't have to always be in the mirror, but you have to prepare. You have to think about who your audience is, what you want to communicate, the context of where they are, how much time you have, how to engage with them. Now, over time, you don't have to think about all of those, but when you're starting, somebody comes to me, for example, "I want you to mentor me, blah, blah, blah." I'll be like, okay, where are you going to be speaking? What is the content? So first of all, you've got to know your stuff. Don't just show up. You've got to prepare. So preparation is important. And you can invest in becoming articulate. Whether it's for work, whether it's socially, etc., you can invest in that. With everything that you do is how you hone it until it becomes a part of you. So I believe that, yes, it may be by nature, but I strongly believe that everybody
can nurture as well.
And the main thing is to be authentic. Because I feel like if you're putting on an act, you're soon going to be discovered. So I think people that I found that are really good communicators, they have honed in the best of being themselves. And people either take to you or they don't.
It's quite interesting you say that, because I've been doing this podcast. This is probably our 20th episode, and I'm not a trained journalist. I'm a chartered accountant, work in the city. But before every interview, believe it or not, I am nervous, because especially when you've never met the guest before, you're not quite sure there's going to be a connection, there's going to be a vibe and all that. It's always nervous, and I spend a considerable amount of time also preparing, doing research about the person, research about the questions I'm going to ask and all that. I don't just turn up and start asking questions. But these are all things that I believe that our viewers can learn from. The fact that you need to prepare. You need to prepare. And like you're saying, for public speaking, you need to stand in the mirror, and practice. Because practice makes perfect.
So fortunately, I'm no longer standing in front of the mirror. But I am doing my research, and I'm thinking about my talking points and thinking about what I do want to put across.
So Jacque, in line with what you just said, engagement, what can you tell us about engaging with the audience, engaging with your network, intentionally engaging, not just casually engaging? I mean, we put out this podcast every week, and for us it's a means of engaging with the wider community. But then some people just think that there's a sense of entitlement, things just happen, and probably are not as intentional about engaging. What can you tell us about why people should engage?
So my view is that the human condition is about connection, it's about engagement. If we meet socially, I'm engaging on a social level. So there's no preparation, we're just vibing off each other, etc. But if I'm doing public speaking, or if I'm chairing a panel discussion or interviewing such as you are today, for me to be able to engage, I've got to have an interest in the audience or the subject matter, which means I've got to prepare.
Okay.
And then we've got a talking point.
Okay.
You know, when I came in, it was a bit embarrassing hearing you read about what I've done, but it also meant that I know that you're taking this seriously.
Okay.
And then that means that I feel like there's a connection.
Okay.
We're not just doing this for the sake, some sort of vanity project. We're
Right.
here
Yeah.
for a reason.
Okay.
And you engage, whether it's on a podcast, whether you're pitching for funding, you're pitching for a contract, etc. You engage by knowing about the other and where they come from and creating those connections.
So as a leadership
Yes.
expert, let's just imagine the scenario. Okay?
Yes.
You go into, you have an idea, you've got you're building a tech company, a tech startup, and you're pitching for funds. So you have the opportunity to make a presentation to a venture capital firm, and you kind of walk into the room, you've done your
Yes.
prep work, you've got your figures, you've got your charts and everything. Just talk us through what you would do if you're talking to somebody, you're coaching somebody as to how they should go through this process.
Yeah, so, you know, when they, and I have done actually accelerators before I went into VC with startups. So, what is the premise? What is your business all about? Who are your customers? Who is your audience? What problem are you trying to solve? What value? If you're pitching for work, how are you going to be able to scale the expertise, the needs? So all of those are things that most entrepreneurs will have. That is the business case. And there is no shortage of talent in terms of business propositions. And you and I come from Africa, you know, from Ghana, I'm from Kenya. There's a lot of opportunity. But we also want to know why you. Why do I want to work with this particular entrepreneur? So the story about your business and why we should invest or go into partnership, collaborate, etc. is really important. But what about you? What has brought you to this idea? What is your background? And so often when I'm at deal flow, etc., I do hear conversations about the founders and their background, not just their competence, but who they are as people, their values, how will they work with other people, can they scale up, will they have founder syndrome, all of those considerations. So when you're showing up, you want people to connect with your idea, with your business, but they should also be able to connect with you and your background. And I think about many companies that I've had about. There's a company in South Africa called Fundamate. And the premise is to be able to initially provide past exam papers to those who don't have Wi-Fi, and will be able to have it for 10 or 12 minutes per day. And so you've got to give them the value add. That it was, it's grown up to more resources. But it's the two founders, co-founders, one who grew up in a township, built his first computer, did not have Wi-Fi, but then ended up being brilliant, going to the top university. But that's the background. So understands need from a really grassroots fundamental level. Then his co-founder, white South African, privileged background, but has got a tech background, and them coming together is a persuasive and interesting story. So you're connecting with their impact business, but you're also connecting with them as founders. And I think it's important. When I think about other companies that I've come across, I think about the company and what it does, but I'll think about the individual or the individuals who are driving it. And to be honest, without people, there is nothing. I mean, organizations, companies, banks, establishments, churches, schools, everything. It's all about people. And so for me, people are the problem. But we're also thankfully the solution. And so when you're showing up to pitch, we would expect you to be showing how your idea, your business is the solution. That you'll be creating impact and change. And we're getting some change out of it as well. You know, there's got to be financial alternatives. You can tell, thankfully, I have left my leanings to be completely pro bono. Rehab may be working.
Yeah.
Yes.
So tell us a bit about founder syndrome. You just mentioned founder syndrome, which I find quite interesting. Tell us what the attributes of founder syndrome are.
No, I don't want to say what the attributes are. But founder syndrome is a syndrome that you put your life and soul into putting something together. And it may go to a place whereby you may not be the natural fit to lead it. You may not have the expertise.
Yeah.
You know, when you began at 4, 10 of you, and now you're 250,
Yeah.
maybe 2,000, and to be able to step aside.
Okay. For the right person.
For the right person.
Okay.
The psychological impact, the financial investment, the sacrifices, maybe even control. This is, do you trust people? I mean, I know that people remember when they first went to school, when they dropped their child off to school for the first time, this handing it over.
Okay.
It's difficult.
Okay.
It is difficult to be able to hand over.
Okay.
This is where mentoring and coaching and sometimes when conflict resolution comes in.
Okay.
And it's not being done for the wrong reasons.
Okay.
But it's that being able to detach yourself and let something go on beyond you. You could still have a role and a space, but it can go beyond you. And maybe for people like such as myself, I'm always thinking about legacy and going beyond myself.
Yeah.
Now, but there are times when I've been involved in a project and I've got to check myself and be like, ooh, you're kind of holding on a little bit too tight. You're not manna from heaven. You're not the only person that can do this thing.
Yeah.
And that's what leadership is about. Being able to convene and bring people who can add value and work to their strength.
Okay.
Leadership is not about ego.
Okay.
So sometimes founder syndrome can be as a psychological attack. It can also be ego as well.
Okay.
Not being able to let go and to trust.
Okay.
It could just be a force of habit. You've been doing this for so long to actually imagine doing
Stepping
it
back.
any different.
Yeah.
And this Kenyan person who used to be a human rights lawyer now is in VC. How are we supposed to? But you do understand the difficulty.
Yeah.
And it's getting people to be able to go beyond self to the idea of their business, the community, their impact, etc. It is trying.
I guess so. I understand where you're coming from. So in terms of your persona, because we've spoken a bit in the recent past, but we've only just recently met. So I can tell that you're very you're very true to your roots, because your outfit, I think, has some African
Always.
African bits and pieces.
Yes.
And also because of your arts perception skills. So just maybe tell us a bit about your outfit and what the different things mean and how the different things come together.
Definitely didn't think about it.
You're not expecting this.
I didn't expect that. Now I'm really on the spot.
I'll put you on the spot.
Really on the spot. The way I dress is my creative outlook.
Okay.
So I'm not dressing for anybody.
Okay.
I'm dressing for myself. It feels good.
Okay.
Putting in different things together. You know, I had my trainers and I have my kitten heels.
Yeah.
It just makes me feel good, and I hope that I present better because I feel good within myself is really important. And also, I have an interest in art and an interest in, maybe not fashion, in style. But that has also led to criticism.
Okay.
So people say, oh, this Jackie. Actually, even ask me, what do you actually do? You just like dress up and show up at all of these events. And you know, when I was younger, I might be stupid enough to offer an explanation. There is no explanation.
Okay.
I enjoy it.
Okay.
And I also see myself as some sort of informal ambassador for my clan, for my village, for my family, for the continent.
Okay.
And so it may not be deliberate, but I always have something African.
Okay.
I want to, you know, buy African, build African. So might wear something and tag the designer.
Okay.
You know, when I was younger, I was walking through the streets of London in my 6-inch heels. I don't know how I did it.
Okay.
But now you find me in my trainers. When I get to where I'm going, I wear my heels. So it's also functional.
Okay.
But I think that I present myself as a representation of myself, my own creativity. It does show respect.
Yeah.
for where. I mean, if I showed up in my loungewear, in my pajamas, you might not say anything.
Yeah.
You're like, you know, what's going on here?
Yeah.
So I respect people's occasions.
Okay.
Want to invite me to your wedding and I'll show up in jeans, etc. But it is fun.
Yeah.
But it also is maybe in a way signaling who I am.
Okay.
So I said I'm proudly African. I'm probably arrogantly African.
Okay.
So people who follow me in social media will see what I put out.
Okay.
And it's important because it's important to me, but it's also important in terms of legacy in the next generation.
Okay.
Living in this country and the history. You know, I always say to people that I'm tired, I'm really tired. I am those people whose ancestors have gone through colonization, slavery, civil rights movement, and now we're still talking about Black Lives Matter.
Yeah.
This can be dispiriting for me, but also dispiriting for those who are younger. I work with a lot of young people. I've got my own youth leadership and mentorship program.
As Jolt.
As Jolt,
okay.
part of the Jolt umbrella.
Okay.
And I'd meet people and say, where are you from? And they say, well, I'm from Bushi and my parents are from Accra. I'm from Newham and my parents are Kenyan. Then in my head I'm like, are you not from where your parents are from?
Yeah.
But then I also grew up. It's also not for me to impose identity in people. But I remember many years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, at some conference, and I was talking about African art, culture, music, the Renaissance, and all the good stuff about being African. And there were these two young ladies in the audience, 21 and 23. And they were crying. And we were like, what is elicited?
Yeah.
They said, for the first time, one of them said, for the first time in my life, I feel proud to be African.
Wow. That's
based
amazing.
on seeing the interaction between myself and the lady I was speaking to, the pride and the joy. Coming here, we're speaking about the troubles that are going on in Kenya. They're being called riots, but they are demonstrations, maybe protests, maybe heavy-handed. But that does not take away from the fact that I come from a wonderful, wonderful country. God's own land, the cradle of mankind. You know, like literally, the first oldest car in the world is from Kenya.
Oh, wow, okay.
My own history, my ancestors and their spirituality and what they've been through is a matter of great personal pride that I think fortifies me and carries me through life. Because first of all, for me to get here is through the industry work, hard work and sacrifice of many. And recently I went for an award ceremony and a lady mentioned something about future ancestors. So I'm not preoccupied on how I'm presenting myself. But I do know that by being here, what people see of me and what I do and I leave behind is important. You and I are future ancestors. So if we have shame about where we come from, we're not sure, we don't have confidence, that is a terrible legacy to leave anybody. So I could just be arrogantly African at home, but I'm proud and arrogantly African everywhere. Because I am African wherever I go. You know, and if I'm on vacation, when I'm with my friends, they say, where are you from? They'll all be saying they're from London. I'm like, I'm from Kenya. They're like, did we not just come on the same flight? Like, listen, leave me alone. And I always get preferential treatment. But there is something about identity that is grounding, that is powerful. And to be able to articulate this to those who are younger than us, I think is really, even some people who are our age, still have got all these hang-ups. I mean, we're here. I mean, as much as I'm talking about being proudly African, I am. But what are we speaking? We're not speaking in Tree. I'm not speaking in Swahili, are we?
No.
That means we have some work to do. So I want to have those conversations, but I want people, I hope, so what I want, actually, that's ego speaking. I would hope that whether you're African, Caribbean, whether you're Asian, that you have pride in self and all aspects of what that means. I mean, the hair, locked hair and everything. fine. I can, sometimes I have 3 or 4 hairstyles in a day, and that's okay. But it's still signaling who I am. One, I like what it looks like, but also identifies me with where I come from.
Okay.
Yeah.
As we wrap up this interview,
Yes.
we normally give people an opportunity to dedicate every episode to a person or people of their choice. And in addition to that, also, is there anything you would like to tell our viewers who might be watching? Anything that you want to leave with them?
No, I think I've really said too much. And you're not paying me. If you pay me, I have a lot more to say. But maybe who I'd like to dedicate this. I mean, I don't have to think much about that. I've said this before.
You can speak to the camera.
I've said this before and I'll say it again. I made my daughter and she is the making of me. So I'd like to dedicate this podcast to Vanessa Jacque Onalo, who I often call Mukere. Mukere is her pet name. Okay. Mukere means old woman, and we value our old, etc. But Kanaiza is everything to me. Okay. I could have still been wayward, etc. But Kanaiza, you've given me a sense of responsibility. Your inner and outer beauty and your strength is what keeps me striving to make every platform I go on better for you and for your cousins. And you challenge me, you're my daughter, but you're also my mentor and cheerleader. And I remember once you said to me, Mom, I don't think you are fulfilling your potential. And I was like, my God, you seem to have praised me and insulted me at the same time. It was very high praise because it was really important that you saw this potential in me. But though you were my daughter, you still felt I could go farther. And I, to you, because you love me unconditionally, but you also don't let me get away with just anything. And, I thank you for that. So yeah, my life is everything is so much better because of you. And I look at you and what you're doing for yourself and the family and for the community. And it gives me great pride.
That's really touching. I'm touched. Jackie?
She'll be embarrassed, but it's okay.
So, Mom, that's not cool.
Yes.
But Jackie, thank you so much for your time and for coming on this podcast. And I'm sorry we're not paying you, but one day we will pay our guests. And what do you think about this podcast and what we're trying to do?
Yes. What you're trying to do is really important. It's invaluable. Now, you and I have had the privilege of being on different platforms, different stages, but there's so many other stories. Wonderful, strong, inspiring, motivating stories that will never have a platform. And this could be their platform. This is their platform. Everybody's story is important, whether you have a title behind your name or not. Everybody has got an important story to tell. I say this platform is a place for conversation. So like on a human level, it's good to talk.
Yeah.
Have a few laughs.
Yeah. Why not?
It's really important to do that. But also to be able to mentor. I have learnt a lot from my interaction with you. I've learnt a great deal from watching other podcasts. The last one I watched was Boko. Very biased, he's from Kenya, so I don't know. But that opportunity, one of my famous sayings is learning, sharing and growing. And I see this platform as a platform for learning, sharing and growing together. And so I look forward to hearing many, many other wonderful stories with lessons, with anecdotes.
Yeah.
And with Pink, maybe.
Well, having said that, she's an Arsenal supporter, so that's a bit questionable.
Resilience. We are the people, we stick with you.
Well, Jackie, once again, thank you so much for coming on Against All Odds podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd like you to do a couple of things for me. First of all, I'd like you to leave some comments in the comment section below. If there's any questions that you'd like to ask Jackie, you can put them in the comment section below. I will pass them on to her and come back to you on those as well. I'd also like you to like, share, and subscribe. We're trying to grow the platform, and you can help us in this endeavor. And I believe that your contribution will help us together to build a solid platform, legacy platform for generations to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And see you next week.
Thank you and goodbye. Thank you very much.